Hello everyone, and welcome back to Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. In our last episode, we had Queen Victoria and her husband and daughter and others helping her find a wife for her oldest son, Prince Edward. They had at first had Princess Alexandra off their list because of her mother and her link with the Cambridges. Queen Victoria didn't like the daughters, the Grand Duchess Augusta or Princess Mary Adelaide. Finally, everybody got on board, and then the prince seemed to be dragging his feet. Finally, Prince Albert, who was Prince Edward's father, got him to see reason. And at the end of the video, unfortunately, Prince Consort, which was Prince Edward's father, passed away. So let's see what's going on today. Victoria felt like the stress of her son's affair with the actress Nellie Clifton had depleted her husband's strength, and she felt like Prince Edward was the direct cause of his father's death. Princess Christian, that's Princess Alexandra's mother, had heard about the Prince of Wales' escapade from her cousin, the Duke of Cambridge. She was deeply distressed, not so much by the prince's lapse from virtue, as by the not altogether accurate news that there was very serious discord between the Queen and her son. Wally Paget found her in floods of tears over the Duke's letter, declaring that she feared her daughter's position might be a very difficult one, since if the Queen really disliked her son so intensely, she was bound also to dislike his wife. Queen Victoria wanted the wedding to go forward, although the mourning for the Prince Consort had put a stop to any idea of an immediate engagement. The Prince Consort had approved the match, and with her, his wishes now had to be the force of law. The marriage is a thing, and beloved Papa was most anxious for it, she wrote to her daughter. I feel it is a sacred duty he, our darling angel, left us to perform. She was touched that Princess Alexandra had spoken so prettily and feelingly about the Prince Consort's death, and with a special word of sympathy for the Prince of Wales himself. The prince and his attitude was unclear. The Queen planned to send him on a tour of the Middle East in order to avoid a constant contact, which is more than ever unbearable to me, and when he left England on February the 6th, she still professed herself uncertain as to his matrimonial intentions. But if the Prince of Wales would not have Princess Alexandra, his brother, Prince Alfred, was willing and anxious to do so. Alfie made no secret of the fact that he would like this beautiful girl, whom, incidentally, he had never seen, for his own bride. If Bertie turns obstinate, the Queen wrote, I will withdraw myself altogether and wash my hands of him. Afy would be ready to take her at once, and really, if Bertie refuses her, which no one thinks he will, I would recommend Afy's engaging to marry her in 3 years. In Denmark, the uncertainty of the situation was not unnaturally preying upon Princess Christian's mind. All negotiations were done by the mother, the father, remaining silent in the background. Without consulting her daughter, Princess Christian had taken responsibility and refused a tentative proposal from Russia, thinking a Prince of Wales was a more eligible partner than a Czechoslovak. Now thinking that all the English marriages may not happen, she wished, as the Crown Princess expressed it, to have the Czechoslovak in reserve. She therefore became so reluctant, where previously she had appeared all enthusiasm, that Queen Victoria could only suppose that the stories about the Prince of Wales had reached her ears by the way of the Cambridge family. Queen Victoria was worried that maybe Princess Christian heard about Bertie's escapade, and the Queen wrote in great alarm, forgetful that 2 months previously she herself had been insistent that Princess Christian should be told about his bad behavior. She was so fearful lest Wally Paget should be spoiling the simple Princess Alexandra that apprehension made her quite incoherent. One word about Princess Alex. Don't encourage too much dressing or smartness, great quietness and simplicity, going to the opposite of loud or smart dress like our foolish English girls. For God's sakes, don't let Wally try to encourage them to catch the poor boy by that fashionable dressing, anything but that. What the Queen didn't realize was how the death of his father affected him. He was stunned and distressed by the tragedy, He had not been able to turn his mind immediately to thoughts of marriage. Now, however, he had time to recover from the shock. On his way back from the East, he broke his journey in Paris, where he spent his time buying jewels and pretty trinkets for his intended bride. And when he arrived in England, the Queen found him immensely improved and most anxious for marriage. Other people, however, were equally anxious that the marriage should not take place. Both Stockmar and Ernest of Coburg were still against the scheme and scandal about Princess Alexandra and her family, and it circulated freely. There was that old story of Princess Alexandra and the scar on her neck. They thought it was tuberculosis, but it wasn't. When the Crown Princess's sister-in-law heard about the meeting that took place in Spire, Louise of Prussia had insisted that both Prince and Princess Christian were most undesirable characters. The father is a drunkard, and for some time the mother bore a very bad reputation. Wally Paget and her husband had no difficulty in exposing these tales as fabrications, but virtuous though Princess Christian and her daughter might be, some of their relations were not so blameless. Princess Alexandra's grandmother was said to be wicked and very intriguing, besides not respectable, whilst, according to the Crown Princess, the story about an illegitimate child properly belonged to Princess Alexandra's aunt, the Princess of Duchess, and another aunt, Augusta, married to Monsieur Baron Blixen, was separated from him and not at all respectable. Her husband, you know, is an adventurer. This same Baron Blixen was causing much alarm to his sister-in-law, Princess Christian. He was determined to put a stop to the proposed marriage, and with that end in view, he was on his way to England, where she feared he might make great play with his position as Princess Alexandra's uncle and do much harm by his untrue stories. The Queen might well shrink from the thought of the Prince of Wales marrying into such a family. It was left to Sir Charles Phipps, Keeper of the Privy Purse, to point out that the Prince was not marrying Princess Alexandra's family, but the Princess herself. Were the choices between the Princess and another, in other respects, as desirable, the misconduct of the relations might have well been considered a bar to seeking this Princess for the Prince of Wales. But this is not so. There is no other princess whose charm and agreeable manners can compare with those of Princess Alexandra. Sir Charles pointed out that it's of first importance that the Prince of Wales' wife should have beauty, agreeable manners, and the power of attracting people to her, and these the Princess Alexandra seems to possess to a remarkable degree. Clearly, the 17-year-old girl had set so high a reputation for goodness, charm, and beauty that, in spite of scandal and gossip, sensible men considered her to be not merely a possible, but an ideal wife for the heir to the throne. Queen Victoria was about to visit Germany on pilgrimage to the Prince Consort's childhood home, and being anxious to see Princess Alexandra for herself, she arranged to visit her uncle Leopold, King of the Belgians, at Laeken, which was near Ostend, which Prince and Princess Christian would be staying with their family. When Queen Victoria left for Germany, the Prince of Wales was to come to Laeken in order that he might propose to Princess Alexandra. Queen Victoria arrived at Laeken on September the 2nd. The following day she met with a Danish family. This was an awkward occasion, since nervousness made Princess Christian more than usually deaf, whilst the Queen remained constrained and shy, missing the support of her husband. After an exchange of polite sentiments, Prince Christian, who had been passive before now, remarked that his daughter was a good child, not brilliant, but with a will of her own. In this truthful summary of Princess Alexandra's character, Prince Christian stressed the two qualities which Queen Victoria especially desired to see in her son's wife: genuine goodness and the spirit to stand up for herself when and if necessary. Queen Victoria admitted to finding the parents not very sympathetic, adding, however, Alexandra looks as though she were quite different and above them all. Princess Alexandra's trial was soon to come. Difficult as it was for Queen Victoria, it was far more alarming for the 17-year-old girl to be inspected by this formidable monarch. However, Princess Alexandra showed no undue trepidation, but only a sufficiently becoming shyness when she came later that evening to pay her respects to her future mother-in-law. In tactful recognition of Queen Victoria's mourning, she wore a plain black dress without any jewels. Her hair was simply turned back from her forehead to fall in long ringlets to her shoulders. The effect was one of breathtaking simplicity and loveliness, and at once the Queen's heart warmed towards this exquisite young creature who was to be her son's wife. She spoke kindly to her, and presented her with a sprig of white heather, picked by the Prince of Balmoral, saying that she hoped it would bring her luck. Princess Alexandra was much moved, and her emotion showed in her face. The dear child looked so affectionately and kindly at me. In her turn, the Queen was entirely captivated, and she praised the girl in her highest terms possible. How he would have doted on her and loved her. The Prince of Wales made a special journey at Windsor, and there, with the simple piety that was one part of his contradictory nature, he laid a wreath on his father's coffin and prayed for dear Papa's blessing for the step which I am about to take. The next day he left for Augusta. Princess Alexandra now had to face the meeting with her future husband, whom she had seen but once in life, and then only for a few brief hours. On the arrival at Austin, the Prince's Comptroller, Sir William Knollys, was struck by his charge's unaccustomed air of happiness and enthusiasm. He was equally delighted by Princess Alexandra's simple dignity and her total lack of affectation. She was looking her loveliest in spite of Queen Victoria's strictures, while a pageant had seen to it that she was equipped with a few more sophisticated and fashionable frocks than those which Princess Christian had thought suitable. The Prince of Wales left that evening for Brussels with his mind made up. He was determined to ask this beautiful girl to be his wife. The next day, when the Danish family visited him at Brussels, he took the opportunity to tell Prince Christian of his intentions. "I never saw anybody look so pleased as he," was his naive comment on the reactions of his future father-in-law. On the 9th of September, the whole party met again at Laeken, and King Leopold tactfully suggested a walk in the gardens, where it was easy enough for the prince and princess to fall behind the rest of the party. She gave him an opening by showing him the Queen's sprig of white heather. He proposed, and at once she accepted him. He asked her not to be too hasty, but to consider the matter carefully. That, she replied, she had done long ago. Was she indeed sure that she liked him well enough to become his wife? Yes, she answered, and kissed him. One question came up. Were these two young people, who were so slightly acquainted, in love with one another? Sir Charles Phipps had no doubt on the subject. He was certain that the Prince of Wales, at least, was not. Writing from Brussels on the very day of his proposal, he commented to Queen Victoria, "It would be absurd to suppose that a real feeling of love as yet exists for a person whom His Royal Highness has only seen in all for a few hours. But given the smallest excuse for so doing, the prince was ready and anxious to fall in love with the girl who had been selected as his bride. Ever since the discovery about the Nellie Clifton episode, he had been told over and over again that his only hope for salvation lay in an early marriage. Both the Prince of Wales and Princess Alexandra had been brought up to expect that their marriages would be arranged for them, and for him, at least, the choice of a partner was very limited. A writer in the Saturday Review remarked, "A man who can only marry 7 women may count himself singularly fortunate if one of the 7 unites so many recommendations as the Princess Alexandra." The Prince of Wales was clearly delighted by the enthusiastic praise of Princess Alexandra, which met him on every side. It gratified his pride to know that someone in whom he had already felt a proprietary interest was so universally admired. He had a connoisseur's eyes for a pretty woman, and here was one of the loveliest women in the world, willing and anxious to marry him. She was not only beautiful, she was also warm-hearted, ready to give him the affection that he so badly needed. It is not surprising that 3 days after he had been accepted by the princess, he could write to his mother in words which have the unmistakable ring of truth. "I frankly avow to you that I did not think it possible to love a person so much as I love her. Princess Alexandra's own feelings were more difficult to assess. At Brussels, before the actual proposal, both Wally Paget and the Countess Reventlow had reported seeing her as being very much taken with the Prince of Wales, and it seems as at this stage she was more in love of the two. In the prince's letter to his mother, at the proposal of the 11th hour, he remained a little uncertain, while Princess Alexandra had no doubts or hesitation. How should it have been otherwise? A young girl brought up in seclusion and comparative poverty is wooed by the most eligible young man in the world, and he, should he choose to exert himself, one of the most attractive, he turns most ladies' heads, wrote the crown princess of her brother. People who saw them following the engagement were in no doubt of their happiness. They went riding, and the Prince of Wales was filled with admiration for her iron nerve. She played the piano and sang to him in a peculiarly sweet voice. Queen Victoria had laid down that even after the engagement, the lovers should only be allowed to see each other alone in a room next to the princess's mother's, with the door open for a short while. But it seems that Princess Christian may have been a little more lenient. So I'm going to end the video here. In this episode, it was interesting to see how things worked out with Prince Edward, who needed a little time because he was so upset over his father's death. And then, afterwards, he decided to marry Princess Alexandra. Queen Victoria was gung-ho because she knew her husband would have been so pleased if they would marry. It seems that Princess Alexandra had a charm that made her loved by all who met her. The Queen was taken with her right away, even if she wasn't so sure about her parents. And I like the line where Sir Charles Phipps, Keeper of the Privy Purse, pointed out that the prince was not marrying Princess Alexandra's family, but the princess herself, and that seemed to put the whole thing into perspective. In our next episode, we'll see more on the engagement and then the marriage, which should be just as interesting to find out about. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you haven't subscribed, if you could do so, it would help the channel to grow, as well as giving it a thumbs up. It's all a great help. And if you haven't clicked on the notification bell, if you could do that, it lets you know when a video is posted. More importantly, I want to wish everyone a good day, and tune in again soon for another episode of Queen Elizabeth, A Day in Her Life. Thank you. Bye.